So our next speaker is the wonderful Heather MacTaggart, and she's from Toronto in Canada. And she's going to talk to us today about unschooling and what that means for us. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Very nice to be here. And I'm just going to add one thing to what you said. In particular, what we're talking about is unschooling school. And there's a difference between unschooling and this idea that we have around unschooling school.
Yeah, perfect. So Heather, what do you think are the challenges in today's education system?
We don't have enough time to discuss all of the challenges. There are so many. I would say that the biggest one is that it has hardly changed since not only you and I were children, but since our grandparents were children. And it in no way really reflects what we know about children learning the brain, human nature, or what we need for the economy, the society, our society, or the future. Other than that, it's perfect.
just a couple of things there.
Okay, yeah, just a couple of tiny things.
So what's one thing that you wish you had learned at school?
I learned in the traditional way. I learned so little because I did not fit the model. So, I was probably dyslexic, didn't learn to read, didn't learn math, didn't learn a lot of things until, after grade 6. So after I was sort of 11 or 12 years old. What I did learn was how to figure it out for myself. And what do I need to do to learn? So what I wish I had learned or known then was you don't have to listen to all this. You can say, no, thank you. I'm not participating in that activity because I don't like it and I don't agree with it and I don't want it. I wish I'd thought of some of the things I've thought of now as an adult around how we need to give kids choice and agency in what they do, because that's the only way anything sticks anyway. So the idea, wasting all the time that I wasted trying to memorize and force stuff into my brain that I was never going to use or remember as an adult, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I'd learned earlier to stand up for myself.
Wow. And I can just imagine so many teachers saying to me right now, what are you doing? Advocating in a way, children being able to opt out of all of these different things. Our classes will be mayhem and so on and so forth. And so that leads into this really next good question, which is, what on earth is unschooling school? And before you answer that question, I need to let you know as well that I did homeschool 4 of my children, my 4 children. And we tried school at home for the first 6 weeks. And then I spent the next 2 years unschooling. And the learning that they did was incredible.
Yeah.
So I know about unschooling at home.
Yeah.
I want to hear about unschooling school.
Right. Okay. So the idea, as you know, of unschooling is generally thought of as a form of homeschooling where you let the kids lead. Where the kids, it's not you're not doing school or not learning, it's just that the child is in the driver's seat. And that is because biologically, we know that makes sense. Human beings are literally born to learn. We are the preeminent learning species, not the preeminent teaching species. That's not it. It's not like we're these fabulous teachers. It's that we are designed to learn. So the idea of unschooling school is, how do we use all the wonderful resources that our schools have? The amazing teachers who love kids and went into teaching because they love kids, because they want to make a difference in people's lives. The books, the equipment, the science equipment, the gymnasium, the playgrounds, all of the great things. How do we use all those great things differently? How do we use them less like school? So hence unschooling our schools.
Yeah, so there's so many things that this is making me think of. But I'd like to come back to you first and ask you, what about that innate philosophy of learning? What is that?
Well, that's precisely what I was just saying. So I think that there's really two basic philosophies. The dominant one is the standardized philosophy, which is that kids need to be taught. That you need to break subjects down into smaller parts. You need to divide kids up by age. You need all these structures, and you need all this standardization. And kids should go through things in this way because that's what we've decided, and that's what we've been doing for the last 150 so years. And that's what I call the standardized model. But the innate model is completely different. The innate model says we're born to learn, that we are learning beings, that we do it naturally, that we do it as our mentor Peter Gray says, naturally, joyfully, playfully, through play, through exploration, because each generation is actually driven biologically to figure out, okay, what's going on around me? What do I need? And do I prepare myself for adulthood? That's what we do as human beings, figure that out. When we put in a standardized curriculum and standardized assessments and we divide kids up by how old they are, we are getting in the way of all that. We are literally messing around with natural biology and with natural instincts and the natural educative instinct that kids have. So the innate philosophy of learning says, okay, let's provide these great resource centers and let's get out of the way and let's support kids, teach them when they ask, help them when they ask, but let's let them alone a lot more than we let them alone, because they will figure life out. That's what they're designed to do.
Mm. So it's almost like so much of what you're talking about is fits with our early childhood curriculum, where you're creating this rich environment and then you're enabling this play-based learning and so on, where children are able to learn through that. And you're encouraging this to be able to go right through school, right?
Yeah. My feeling is that, preschool and kindergarten are not so bad, and it's all downhill from there. And if we would just stick to what we know, like if a 4 and 5, if a 2-year-old, 1.5-year-old learns how to talk basically only because they're listening to other people talk. There's no talking lessons. There's no walking lessons. In fact, one of my children started walking I determined too early, and I was trying to like, no, it's too early. That did not matter. It was not on my agenda. It's on their agenda. And I think it's the same thing for everything else. It's just hard for us to believe that.
Yeah.
But there are lots of examples where that works. And unschooling at home is one of them.
Mhm. And that's exactly what so many people are saying, actually, is that they're seeing this joy of learning, this curiosity and stuff that is there in the children in the preschool, and that is um, squashed out of them. I was looking for
Yeah.
the right word for that as they go into school. And it's not, as you're identifying, it's not because the teachers are wanting to squash it out of them. The teachers are there because they're wanting to see these beautiful children growing and so on.
Mhm.
So much of it is systemic, isn't it?
It's truly systemic. And people say, "Oh, the system is trying to do that, and the system is trying to do this." Well, there's not really any. I mean, the system is only the pieces that are there because somebody put this in place, and okay, that's good, and then the next person did this, the next person. So then we have this thing, which really is a very almost mechanical system, which no one actually owns. And often people that are elected politically will look at it and say, wow, we need to change this, but we can't because of this and this and this. Or we get parents that are saying, we need back to basics, we need more testing. So it becomes self-reinforcing. It says, oh, well, we tried this and they don't like it or they don't want it, and it goes back. So it doesn't come down to, I don't think personally, there's nobody there with this horrible agenda around education. It's just that we have created a system that is unbelievably ineffective at what it's really supposed to be doing and incredibly out of date based on what we actually know.
Fantastic. There's going to be lots and lots of comments from this, I know.
Oh, yeah. And some people that think I'm a nut.
I don't think you're a nut at all. So much of this fits with what I have seen and what I've heard from the conversations I've been having. So let's have a look at what is a free learner, because that's what we're talking about as we're unschooling
Yes.
school, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got free learners, if you like, in the early childhood centres. What does this look like as they come into school and we're enabling free learning?
So the idea of unschooling school, so unschoolingschool.com is the website, and really it's a movement. And the movement is saying we're naturally born to learn. We need to create centers and places using our schools that are the right environment for kids to educate themselves. And so there's a designation that we refer to, which is called being a free learner. And a free learner is somebody that's going to go to publicly funded school, but make choices, have consent in what they do and what they don't do. We have a whole section we have a tab on the website under the free learner tab. And actually, we've got a bunch of university students, college and university students right now working on creating a separate free learner website that's youth built for younger youth. And what that could look like will entirely depend on the person. So somebody at 14 years old might go to their school and say, the only thing I'm going to participate in at school are two things: art class and time outside. Somebody at 15 might say, I just don't want to take this biology class. I'm going to do everything else that's on my normal timetable, but I've decided to opt out of that. Some people might say, I'm not going to come at all for grade 5. Our family's going on a trip around the world, and I'm gonna learn whatever I learn through that experience. Or I'm 18, I've got one more year left. Instead of doing that year, I'm going to take a job and I'm going to volunteer. And then I'm going to come back and focus on the final year courses that I now realize I need for what it is that I actually want to do next, because I've taken a look at what a job might look like for me. So, it's as individual as the person, but the concept, which seems so crazy, what do you mean kids getting to make choice about what classes they take and how long they stay in a room, and if they can go to the library, on their own, and if they can miss days at school here and there, with ideally with parents' consent. But we know in the principles, for example, of adult learning, and most teachers would be familiar with what those are. And choice is at the top of the list. Adults don't learn unless they say, I'm going to learn this. Well, guess what? It's the same for kids. So the idea that this is somehow, like heresy to say kids should choose what they do, if you think about it, it makes total sense.
It does. It does make total sense. And yet I can hear a real fear in so many teachers around
Yeah.
this. And so it's about helping them see that it might not be so crazy after all, in a way. I can talk about the experience of my second son.
Mm.
And we homeschooled for 2 years doing unschooling. Now, he was nearly 7 years old when we started, and he was nearly 9 years old when he went back to school. So he had done grade 3 and grade 4, or in New Zealand, year 3 and year 4 through
Mm.
homeschooling, using unschooling as a model. He went back to school and did year 5 and year 6. And it was 3/4 of the way through year 6 that he finally came home and he said, Mum, I learnt something today. Now, that was 1 3/4 years
Right.
where all of the stuff that they were doing in school was stuff that we had done, or he had done,
He had
through
done.
following his interests while
Mhm.
homeschooling. So, through unschooling at home, through the experiences that we'd had, through the books that he'd chosen from the library, and all of these sorts of things. And I could see that he was driven to learn. He had such an interest in so many different things, but those things were not the things that the rest of the class were doing at that particular time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could say that these ideas are old, but there's a Confucius quote that is, "Tell me and I forget, show me and I remember, let me do and I learn." Like, we know this. Kids learn through doing, and they learn through doing things that they're interested in. And I think that, I know that particularly when I'm talking about these ideas with teachers or educators, that they're like, good grief, that if we let that happen at school, it'd be mayhem. But you know what? I don't think it would. And I've seen schools where this is like, I've spent a week down, for example, at Sudbury Valley School, which is one of the kind of, I call it the mothership. It's one of the main, it's been around for over 50 years. Kids are 4 years old to 18 or 19, and they go to school every day, and all day long, they do whatever they want. Some kids learn to read at 3, or they come in reading at 3 or 4 when they come in. Some don't learn to read till they're 14 or 15. But no one ever leaves the school not reading, or not doing math, or not understanding how the world works. And more importantly, not understanding who they are, that they've got time to fiddle around and figure out who they are. So, I think for teachers, it's just imagine that the kids that actually showed up in your class wanted to be there. So if you're a high school teacher, for example, and you're teaching biology, well, you got at least half the class that couldn't give a fig. At least half. That's generous. So maybe you now only have 7, but they all want to be there, and they're really, really interested, and they want the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So the idea of even having half the school that kids are designated as free learners, which means they can come and go to classes as they want respectfully. And we have a whole section on respect on the website. Because with responsibility, with freedom comes responsibility. So, it would allow teachers to get back to what they actually really like doing. Instead of behavior management, which certainly in North America, the estimate is that teachers spend 65 to 85% of their time in behavior management. I'm not sure what else we need to understand that there's something wrong. Like, that's crazy. So if
Yes.
you're not doing that because the kid that's there wants to be there, imagine how much better your job would be. And then somebody's in class and they're enthralled with it and they tell their friend, oh, we just did this. It was great. Oh, you know what? Maybe I do want to do that. I was led to believe that I hated history because I hated the way it was taught and learning generals and wars and dates and all this kind. I love history. When I go to any country, I go to museums, I read all the plaques. But I think I was in my 30s before I realized that I actually liked history. And we do that almost systematically with so many subjects because we're forcing it instead of letting people come to it.
Mm. We have an academic in New Zealand by the name of Diti Hill. Now, she comes from an early childhood background, and in 2001, she wrote a paper which was called Passion, Power and Planning in Early Childhood. And
Mm.
what she talked about, it's one that I just keep coming back to all of the time. And what she talked about was setting up a rich environment and then
Right.
letting the children go for it, right? And then
Yeah.
following them up and uh, fostering whatever comes out of whatever they're doing, right? But
Yeah.
also allowing the teachers to be able to bring their areas of passion in. And so many of the people that I've talked about remember the inspiring teachers, right? And
Right.
when they have inspiring teachers, those teachers are able to deliver whatever they're delivering with their passion.
Hmm.
And it sparks interests in the students. I was talking to a person who's now studying biochemistry, and his two teachers that inspired him in school were the biology teacher and the chemistry teacher, and so he's now studying biochemistry at university.
Yeah.
And if you think, people that are listening, think back to your own experiences. The teachers that you remember are those inspiring teachers.
Or the
It's
ones that you
interesting.
had a relationship with, because we
Yes.
know that's the other thing that what really counts is relationship. There were certain subjects, certainly before I went to university, that even the most inspiring, fantastic teacher wouldn't have done it for me because I wouldn't have been interested in it. But if I had a relationship with them, and for example, I did have a good relationship with my history teacher at one point, and I really tried a lot more in that class because I liked him. I liked the guy, so that's key as well. You don't have to be necessarily, teachers, oh, I have to do such a song and dance. I have to be, an entertainer and I have to, put on a multimedia presentation. Well, not really. You need to connect.
Yes,
You know?
yes. Yeah, and that's the core of our curriculum here in New Zealand, actually, in the curriculum at every level, is that it's founded on relationships. And
Mm.
so this is so much a part of what we're talking about here is through this summit as well is, do you see me? Do you know me? Who are these people in front of me? Not they're useless at this particular subject, but who are they? And
Yeah.
how can we bring out their strengths and um, their personalities, their ability to communicate and see other people's strengths so that you get the you do you and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much a part of that. So, how do students become free learners?
Well, by saying I'm a free learner, that's it. It's really as much as it takes. However, we have outlined a process. I don't know if in New Zealand, I'm sure you have something to the equivalent of an individual education plan. So kids that are designated with, dyslexia or autism or something that's out of the ordinary or so-called out of the ordinary. And then they get to have a flexible plan or a different plan that meets the needs of the kind of environment that they have. So we have taken that form and created the free learner individual education plan. And it's not designated by an authority, it's designated by the learner and their family. And it goes through the same kind of process and says, these are the things, these are the accommodations that I require. And these are the things I'm going to participate in and not. So it kind of lays it out. And our idea was that, COVID has put a little bit of a pause on some of this. We've got more people doing this at home, but certainly it was not time to go into the, principal's office and say, hey, we've got 5 families here. We've all decided our children are going to be free learners. Here's our free learner IEPs, and this is what we'd like it to look like. So we think that may happen as we go back, and you guys are far ahead of us in North America, but as we go back to, a more regular life, that, that's the way it can be handled, is through conversation. Conversation ideally with, you get a few people in your neighborhood or your kids' friends, or a group, and go in and talk to the teacher and to the principal and say, we're looking at this, and this is what we'd like. And you're going to find some people that are like, that's great, yeah, kids taking ownership of their education, woohoo, that's what we want. We want ownership. We want the kids to own it. And others will say, get out of here and forget it. But we have to remember, they work for us. Education is a public service. That means the boss is the family and the kid. It's not the other way around. And we've forgotten that somehow. We've thought it's the army. No, it's like a library, or it's like a community center. You don't walk up to a community center and walk in and they go, you, volleyball, get there right now. Wait, I'm here to swim. Don't care if you like swimming, you're going to volleyball. Like, that wouldn't happen. You wouldn't go back to the community center because it's a service.
Mm. This is really interesting when we're thinking of, what does success look like, which is something that we're exploring as part of this summit as well. What does success look like for our families, for our communities, for our societies within school? And so much of that discourse around success has been in the school system, has been able to pass tests, able to meet certain standards within that curriculum. And so here we are reframing, if you like, what success looks like, and accepting that success looks different for different families.
Yeah. Well, and to me, as a mother, success looks like a healthy, happy child and person that knows who they are, knows who they want to be in this world, and knows how to get there. And has the understanding of how they work internally and externally with the world. Knows how to learn and still loves learning. Because if you love learning, you can learn anything, anytime. We have this idea, oh, you're going to fall behind, you're not going to learn this. You can learn whatever you want at any time, if you know how to learn and if you still like learning. But when we kill it, so passing tests should not be the be all and end all. It should be, have we nurtured lifelong learners?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so much part of what's important for the education for the 21st century and beyond, isn't it? Is people that love learning and know how to learn and know what they're interested in, and know also what they need to learn to be able to get through the problems and things that they're facing in their lives. Where do I go and what do I do? And that developing that resilience, that's part of this as well. It's, I was thinking back to when you were talking about the students in the class that were not wanting to be there. And that brings me back to my secondary training, because I am a registered secondary teacher and high school teacher, and have done that I did that for many years before doing what I'm doing now. And part of the training was actually thinking about the number of students that we would face each day, that we would have come into our classes. And it was something like 150 students a day. And they said to us, about 10% of those students will actually want to be there. So the other 90% are not likely. Yes, this was in our training. Yes.
Wow.
And the other thing about it, they said, was that you're going to be teaching these students for 3 or 4 hours in a week. If you try and teach every single class an amazing lesson, you will burn out so quickly as a teacher that you'll be lost to the profession. So they said, aim to teach one great lesson to each group of students every week. The other 3 or 2 or 3 can be really boring, and that's fine. Right? So, I mean, yes.
And they didn't say, forget the other 2 or 3 and let kids do what they want. Say, hey, what would you guys like to do today? And let them, like that model might not have been bad if it had been adjusted a little bit.
Yeah. So yes, you have got the whole idea of teacher burnout and so on. And yes, we have got to look after ourselves as teachers. But I look at the students and look at a different model. And I go back to that article by D.T. Hill, Passion, Power and Planning in Early Childhood, and some of the things that you talked about there. And if we are able to create spaces in our schools where we can teach with passion, great lessons, not necessarily for a week, but have people choosing to come no matter what age, then we have a very, very different environment for learning. And you get that spark of learning that goes across each other. The other side of this as well is something that you identified, because it's come out in the conversations that I've had with others, which is around the age bands. And I know when I was homeschooling, people said that they were really worried about the socialization and the socialization of children. And one of the answers that I gave them was that children are not born in litters. Why are we educating them in litters? And
Right.
if you think about our lives as adults, we have to get on with so many different people of so many different ages. And so this as well is a real problem, if you like, with the education system as it stands, where people come and they're with people from the same age all the way through and learning largely the same things and being tested on the same things. And it is killing so many things for
Mm-hmm.
so many people, and contributing to that idea of the teachers having only 10% of their students wanting to be there. And yes, that is a generalization, and there will be people that go, really, were you taught that? Yes, I was told that.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm going to quote that. I wrote it down.
Thank you. So
And
teacher training in New Zealand.
the age things remind me of the great quote by the late great Ken Robinson, who said, "It's as though the most important thing about children is their date of production. You don't get in a room with 56-year-olds and they all want to do the same thing. Why should 10-year-olds all want to do the same?"
Exactly. Okay, so the next question then is, say we've got free learners in our schools. How can teachers support free learners?
Well, I think the first way would be to put up your hand and say, "Ooh, we've got 15 or 20 or 30 free learners. Let me be the one that hangs out in that room." Because I think if you can get where you have 20 to 100 free learners in a school, that it would make sense to designate a space where they can hang out between classes that they're going to. And as you talked about the idea of a resource-rich environment, that's how kids educate themselves, is with having the books and the computers and the equipment and the things that they need to use, or that they should be looking at or investigating because they're going to help them be an adult. But then you'd have various teachers that like this idea that might be circulating in and out of those rooms and say, "Hey, anybody got an issue? Anybody got a challenge? Anybody need me for anything?" And if not, doing exactly what you talked about earlier, doing something they're interested in. Teenagers and little kids, they want to do something when they see somebody who's fascinated by what they're doing. So, you come in there and you're doing your own art project as a teacher, or you are, dissecting a frog, if that's your thing. You're going to then get other kids wandering around, coming around saying, "Oh, that's very cool." So, I think what that looks like is really the guide on the side that we've been talking about this for, I don't know, as long as I've been in education, which is over 20 years. Stop being the sage on the stage and be the guide on the side. Well, it hasn't happened. But if you've got a school that's even a quarter, even an eighth full of free learners, you can actually be the guide on the side.
And that's
and time
really
to do things you're interested yourself.
Yeah, and it can be really scary taking that step, isn't it? Because you no longer become, the person that has all of the content and has all of the answers, and you're having to do that learning alongside the students as they're interested. Like, well, I want to find out about that. I have no idea how to find out about that. Let's go and find out. Or what could
Exactly.
it be?
And what a better adventure! What a better day! I mean, as you said before, the teacher burnout is real, and it is absolutely because of the structure of the system that is not designed for the best intent of teachers either. They are suffering as much as students.
But what this enables is being able to bring in that fun, being able to bring in that excitement, if you like, that adventure, that sense of adventure that life can be. And Karen Boyes was talking about the habits of mind, which is so important. Costa's habits of mind, which you're talking about responding with wonderment and awe, and the curiosity and all of those sorts of things that are part of those habits of mind that can be fostered within this sort of environment.
Yeah.
The other thing that is possible through this, and that lots of people are talking about, is the importance of experiential learning. That's very difficult to do within our systems at the moment,
Right.
isn't it? Because it's hard to take an entire class of students out to a particular thing, and not everybody wants to go, and you've got that idea of cost and so on. How could we bring more experiential learning into a class where you've got a class of free learners, or a school where there are free learners? What are your ideas?
Yeah. I mean, it's easy. The whole thing becomes free learning, becomes experiential learning. So if you give kids the choice about when they come to class and not, now some of those classes may involve a project that's experiential, but it also gives them the liberty to go and volunteer in the community. Go and let's say you want to be a veterinarian, for example. Well, should you really wait until you've done all of school, all of university, medicine, practicum, and everything else to experience that? No, when you're 13 or 14, you should probably go to a vet's office and say, hey, I want to come and hang around here every day. Would that be okay? Can I clean the equipment and mop the floors? Most adults are going to say yes. They're going to try to figure that, wow, this is somebody who's really interested in what I do. What a flattering thing. Let me help. And that's, historically, that's what we did with teenagers. That's what teenagers did. They went to the houses and the homes and the businesses of people that were doing it. They worked on ships, mopping the floors. And that's how they learned about, how to travel the seas. So we've made it all fake and then said, okay, now teacher, figure out how to take a class of 30 and let them do experiential learning. That is a load of work to try to do. But if the walls of the school are more porous, if you've got interesting people coming in and kids going out to do things, then experiential learning is easy. Mm-hmm. It becomes, almost entirely that. And then unless they say, hey, I want to do this exam and I need to sit down and study that exam, can somebody help me? Can somebody tutor me? I mean, there's going to be times where you want to do standard, looking learning or instruction. It just shouldn't be every day, all day long. Mm-hmm. And there should be choice.
Absolutely. Okay, so now think about what would 100 free learners in a school look like? How would that help make teachers' lives better if there were 100 free learners in a school?
Okay, so let's say there's 400 kids in the school. Is that about a right size, an average size?
Depends on the school. Let's go for 400.
I know. Yeah. Let's go for 400. So you've got a quarter of the kids are free learners. So you've got 2 rooms designated as a place where free learners can go and hang out when they're not in a class. And you've got them coming and going to classes that they like, and you've got them coming and going from the school depending on what else they're doing. So let's say it's kids in middle age, or even in middle age, because this doesn't just have to apply to secondary kids, to kids in high school. I mean, it's a little easier in some ways because they're older, obviously, and classes are broken down by subjects and there's a schedule. So for example, with high school, let's say you've got 8 subjects on your timetable. You go to generally 8 in the week. Well, maybe you look at that timetable and say, I'm doing 3. And you come to school and you do those 3. For some of the time, you hang out with your friends in the free learner room. And for some of the time, you go do something else. So how does this impact the teachers? Well, instead of having 90% of the kids in the class not wanting to be there, maybe you're now upping it, because a quarter of the kids, they're only going to be there if they really want to be. So they're going to be, as it were, voting with their feet and going into the classes and the courses and hanging out with the teachers that they connect to and that they find inspiring. So I think that's going to mean much more meaningful connections between teachers and students, which the teachers will love, And imagine you're not spending, that's a quarter of the kids who you're not doing behavior management with, Kids get to choose what they're doing. They're not a pain in the butt. They're doing something they like.
They might also be telling the others to shut up. This is really interesting. So just be quiet.
Right. And I do think that if you've got a quarter of the kids are being free learners, the other kids are going to say, how come you get to do that? Well, here, let me send you the app. Let me send you the text. You go take a look at it, talk to your family. It's a choice. And it will not take long to have, 50% of the school running like that. And then our schools will look very different. And it's, we can still keep offering classes, and we'll find out which ones make sense to keep offering, because there's going to be people in them. And if no one is taking ancient Greek, well, then maybe nobody wants ancient Greek.
Or maybe the ones that actually do go and learn ancient Greek and so on. It's interesting with the COVID era, the number of parents that I've talked to whose students are doing the schoolwork, but then are spending a lot of time after that researching or on YouTube and TED Talks and all of these other sorts of things, learning things that they're actually interested in. And I was talking to a parent the other day with a 15-year-old who is basically doing the schoolwork that they have to do just in order because they have to do it. And then there's this whole world of things that they're involved in. And the parent is going, am I doing the right thing by fostering this interest and letting this child, student, 15 years old, spend the amount of time that they are spending online?
The answer is yes. Big yes to that. I mean, I think of one of the biggest sins that we have in school right now is how much of our kids' time we're wasting. If you can pick up this thing and get the answer in a couple of seconds, why on earth are you making kids spend time memorizing things? We don't need to be doing that, and we're wasting their time when they could be doing something else.
And that's exactly why the summit started, is because my 18-year-old son stood in the kitchen 2 weeks into lockdown, and he said, I feel like I have wasted 13 years of my life at school.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very strong word, and he's not the only one feeling that. So let's think a little bit then, because we still need, or people say we still need to show that students have learnt something, that they need to be able to do something in order to graduate. So what would graduation look like in this format?
Well, I think there's a bunch of options, because again, it comes down to the individual child. We're starting to, and I haven't updated the website to say this yet, but we're starting to say, look, years 1 to 11 are about preparing for year 12. So why don't we just say, do year 12, but prepare for it your way. That might mean going to all the regular classes. It might not. It might be doing it online. It might be doing, a mix. But why we put so much pressure on everybody has to do the same thing at the same time and go, sequentially from one to the next? I mean, somebody at 14 might be ready to do year 12 classes and do very well and go on to whatever's next for them. So, one way that the proof could look like is that we let whoever wants to take year 12 courses and take them as many times as they need to do well in them and to pass and to get out and to do whatever's next. And then the other way is a portfolio, and we have a free learner diploma outlined on the website that is, I would say, more difficult to get than a regular diploma, because it means figuring out who you are and what you want and what is next, and having a plan and convincing some other people that you have a good plan. And you get to pick who those people are because they're people that you love and respect. That's a lot harder than sitting your butt in a class for X number of hours and getting a piece of paper that says, yeah, here's your marks. So to me, those are the two kind of broad choices, but there's lots of other ways.
There's the Rudolf Steiner School also they have a class 12 project where each of the students are able to choose what they want to do for that class 12 project. They spend the whole year doing it, and some of the things that come out of that are absolutely incredible. Yes, they have a presentation to do. Yes, they have some written, a written report to do as a result of or as part of that project. But I've seen things like building a caravan from scratch. I've seen things like creating a record, writing your own music, recording it. Doing all of that sort of stuff, learning how to paraglide, including making the paraglider, learning how to fly, so many different things, going and volunteering in an orphanage over in a different country and raising all of the money to get there and so on. So, and this has been part of these students' journeys, and the learning that they have done through that particular project has been absolutely huge, and yet it's not part of most schools. It's seen as an alternative.
So imagine if in every school we offered all the courses, but they were optional. So they're all taught, there they are, they're all there. People can come in and out of them. And the rest of the time, if you opted not to be in it, it was preparing for and getting ready for your grade 12 project, your 12-year project. And that's what they could do at any point. So a 6-year-old could be starting to think, what do I want for that year 12 project? And how do I prove to myself and the world that I'm ready for what's next for me? And that all the rest of the classes are optional. There you go. Go do it. It's not that different.
Right. So there's a whole heap of things here that we've been talking about today that I'm sure people have made people think, and have raised concerns, have raised interest, have raised all sorts of things. Have you got a final question for people that they can make comments in our Facebook group around what we've been talking about today?
I guess the question would be, what do you need to learn about learning or the brain or children to get this. If this sounds kooky to you, what do you need to, we have an entire section on the website under resources called the Crash Course in Self-Directed Education. And it is a lot about learning in the brain and all of this kind of stuff. So if you get this, great, go there. There's more, and you can spread it around with your friends. If you don't get it, then I would invite you to learn it a little bit more so you can be informed about whether this is a crazy idea or an idea whose time has long come.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Heather, for talking to us today. It's been
Well,
a really interesting conversation to explore these different ideas. And I really thank you for your time and for your passion around this, for your care about teachers, for your care about students, and the outcomes that we can get from doing this.
well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here, and thank you for putting on this incredible event. And I know a ton of hard work that goes into making this happen and pulling it all together, and it's beautifully done. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Okay, and feel free, people, to come and join us over in the room and be able to talk about these things as well, because I know that this will be sparking curiosity in so many different people. So thank you.